So, hello, everybody. Today, we are going to talk to Susanne Mariga, and she is a CPA out of Houston, Texas. And we are going to talk about one of my favorite subjects for entrepreneurs, and that is profit first. If you haven't heard of Profit First, it's a book by Mike Michalowicz, who is also author of several other books, including Fix This Next and The Pumpkin Plan. And what does profit first look like in the life of an entrepreneur? We're going to explore that today and how you can have just a better handle of your finances and create legacy wealth for you and your family. So, welcome, Suzanne.
Hi, Kiva. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm so excited that you are here. So, let's dive in. What is Profit First?
Oh, wow. Profit First is an amazing cash management system. And I'm going to go ahead and say that cash management system, not accounting system. I get so many entrepreneurs that come to me and are like, I want to do that cash management or that Profit First accounting system. I'm like, no, no, no. It's a cash management system. It's simply there to create behaviors that really make you profitable, right? And Profit First really is about aligning, right, what your intentions are, what winning looks like before you even began in order to create that lifestyle that you ultimately want, right? Because at the end of the day, our businesses need to service, right? They need to service and they need to produce the outcome. And so instead of, the traditional accounting equation where you pay your expenses first, right? Revenue minus expenses equals profit, you pay your profit first. So revenue minus profit
Yes.
equals expenses. Pay your profit first, make sure your business is working for you and making sure that your intentions align with your behavior to produce the results that you really want.
Oh, thank you for that. I think there was two key things in their behavior. I hear that so often. It's like, if can I just automate the taking out of the percentages, or can I just automate that? Do you think that with Profit First we should automate, or is it really about that training of ourselves?
I think it's a combination of both, right? It's an automated behavior, right? Because if you do it enough, it's repetitive.
Mm,
And when you have a repetitive behavior, it becomes a habit, right? And so literally it becomes something that you build wealth slowly over time, right? No one becomes a millionaire overnight. It's done by very small steps, one step at a time. And how Profit First works is literally create separate bank accounts depending on our purpose, right? So we have, a revenue account where all of the money goes into this account. We have a profit account. We have a where we're putting our profit at. We're paying our profit first. We have a tax account because, when you make some money, tax man is going to come after you, right? And so you got to have a reserve for taxes. We have an owner's pay account because as an owner, you are your MVP. You're your most valued player. And I can't tell you how many times I meet business owners and I'm like, so how much do you pay yourself? And they're like, whatever's left over, I pay myself. I'm like, all right, you're your MVP. If you go out, if you're the quarterback and you leave, then there is no business. You need to pay yourself. And you need to pay yourself because sometimes we don't have control over when we go out of the game, right? Your back goes out, you catch COVID-19, and you need to be able to pay a replacement and that owner's pay account by setting that up to pay the MVP, even if you step out, you're able to pay that person that's going to replace you. And finally, your operating expense account. And so literally what happens in Profit First is twice a month, as money's coming in throughout the month into our revenue account, we're transferring to our profit account first, then our tax account and our owner's pay account. And then what is left over goes towards your operating expenses. And so we're really using what we call Parkinson's Law. And Parkinson's Law means that, as human beings, Kiva, we are so efficient, right? When we use whatever is given to us, right? If you give me a full plate of
exactly.
food, I'm gonna eat a full plate of food. You give me an order plate, I'm gonna finish that up too. You know what I mean? And that's exactly what Profit First is we're creating small plates in order to control our spend, right? So we only have a limited amount that's going into our operating expense account. Then, I'm gonna have to make some different decisions. I'm gonna have to go, do I
Right.
really want to sign that 5-year lease that's like bigger than a space that I really need right now for 5 years and stretch it out and maybe struggle for the first year and knowing that my sales are going to miraculously increase, or do I want to spend on that new technology, that new computer? Does it really have an ROI, a return on investment? So I'm going to have to make decisions like that.
Oh, wow. That is so enlightening. Those making those database decisions when it's like, no, we're not actually paying out everything that we've decided to purchase. We're going to make sure that we've taken care of the taxes, we've taken care of ourselves. And then this is what we're operating our business off of. Thank you so much. So tell us, why did you decide to open up your own business?
My practice is about 13 years old, and I started out my career working for Arthur Andersen in Chicago, and then later I went to KPMG, and then did a little bit of work in the industry. And you know, right around the time that I had my daughter, and I always laugh because my daughter's the same age as the business, right? And I said, you know what? I really want to be the kind of mom that's present for my child. And at the time that I was a manager, and I was responsible at the company for the Canadian operations. And so literally I was flying every single week from Houston to Toronto every single week.
Wow.
And it got to the point that I was like 7, 8 months pregnant. And when you fly from Houston to Toronto, they have enough flights that eventually you're gonna get on what I call a propeller jet. These are those teeny weeny planes that have like the one seat on one side, the two on the other, and you're like fighting for the one side one and just hoping that your ticket gets lucky. And I was on this one side of the plane, and I was like, I wasn't cute pregnant, I wasn't like the pointy pregnant that a lot of people are. I was the wide pregnant. I could barely fit in the seat. Like literally, I had to tuck my belly in order to fit in the seat and close the seat belt. Okay. And it really hit me that my life was going to change. It was going to change, and it was going to change in a matter of months, because I probably wasn't even allowed to
Right.
be on that plane being in that third trimester. And but nobody asked. Nobody ever asked, how pregnant are you? They're like, maybe she's
No,
just
they
having
don't.
twins and she's just 3 months. But and so, I knew my life was going to change, and I knew I wanted to be present for my daughter. So I started my own firm. And it's interesting because the story was, when I had my daughter, I thought that, I would just take on a few clients and play with Florence, my daughter. We just have a lot of fun together. And we immediately took off. Like we were getting government contracts, major government contracts. We were getting small business clients, and we were really growing fast. But I was my strategy of entering the market was to really lowball my competitors, right? And what I found was that I was working and working and working, but I was having nothing to show for it. In fact, I was
Mm.
working harder for myself than I did in my corporate job. And a lot of your audience probably resonates with that feeling too, of having been there. And it's interesting because, one Sunday night, my husband sat me down, and, it's always scary whenever your husband says, honey, we
Yes.
need to talk, right? That's like the bad thing. Something's going on. And he's like, I think you'll be better off getting a job. That's what he told me.
Whoa.
And I remember my heart just plummeted because I had put all of my life. I mean, Florence and the business were like twins. It was like 3 years old at that point, and they were the twins. And it was heartbreaking because he was absolutely right. My corporate job, I had benefits. I had retirement, right? Because they have 401k and they match you. And I had a really consistent, nice salary being a manager. And that was a hit home for me because suddenly it was like, get a job or change your business. Something's got to change. You cannot
Wow.
continue like this. And, really that year, I met Mike McAllowitz, I learned about Profit First, and it really revolutionized my business.
Awesome. Wow. Yes, those conversations are the ones like we need to talk. Oh goodness, what's going on? So I love though that your husband saw that and was able to, kind of help that with that reshifting and that refocusing. So what mistakes do you feel entrepreneurs make when it comes to managing their finances?
It's a lot of, there's a lot of things that come to my mind, but the biggest thing that I see is they never sit down before they start, and they never define what does winning look like. You
Oh.
know, they live in this random world like, oh my gosh, a sale happened today. 5 sales happened today. We got this amount in the register. We can take our family out to dinner. But they never sit down and go, what does winning look like? Because you have to start with the end in order to re-engineer your pathway to get to that end. And so that's the biggest mistake that I see entrepreneurs make. And unfortunately, most of them don't realize that, right? Because 50% of small businesses are going to fail after 5 years, and then 70% are not going to be left standing after 10, right? So only 35% are left standing. And that's because they never engineer what's important, what's their why. And unfortunately, it has a cost because, even if they do make it to the 10-year mark or 20-year mark, a lot of them aren't prepared to retire because they never put profit first.
Wow. Yeah. So wait and work all of that time, surpass the odds of the 5 years, the 10 years, and still wind up finding yourself in a situation that's definitely less than ideal. Thank you so much for that. So I would love to know, and you've seen a lot in 13 years, what is the biggest piece of advice that you have for entrepreneurs?
I have a lot of
I
advice,
bet.
and it's going to go back to what their intentions are, right? If your intention is to scale your business or to stay small, right, you're going to have a different strategy from each other, right? Because if you want to scale your business, your approach is going to be very, very different from, if I just want to be a mom and pop restaurant. And again, there's nothing wrong with the approach. It's just that simply that, you know, if you're going to scale to international business or get into franchising, it's going to have a completely different approach to being a small business. So first of all, I would love to know the size of their company and what they're going to go after before I give any blanket type of advice. But really, just kind of going back to what we said, Kiva, really start with the end in mind. Start with your end game in mind. Re-engineer those steps and always take your profit first. I'm writing the book Profit First for Minority Business Enterprises. And I'm writing this book, it's a project that started, you know, a few years ago. I didn't start actually writing the book, but the itch started to come like this book needs to happen. The world isn't ready for this book. They need to have this book. And it started because, I was my family is originally from the East Coast, right? My mom grew up in like the Chester, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia area. And it's not necessarily the best area, when you compare areas. And I was visiting a family member and I parked on the side of her house. And, the East Coast, they have different houses than what we have here in the South. They have the houses that are like, they're more like townhomes. They're like right next to
Right.
each other. And there's like this alley in the back of them. And I remember parking like on the side of her house. And, I looked over and I'm like living in suburban Houston. And I see this light post and it's decorated and it's got like balloons, it's got flowers, it's got bears on it. And I'm like, it's a pretty out of place, pretty thing in the middle of this. And so
Right.
I literally go to my aunt and I was like, hey, what happened here? What's going on? Like, why is this right behind your house? And she said, you know what? We had a shooting. We had a gang shooting and a little boy was killed because he was caught in the gang fire. And, you know, when you get to know me, things stay with me a little bit longer than what they stay with normal people because I can't
Mm.
just get out of the how do we, this just happened. Oh, so sad. My mind immediately goes to how do we fix this and how do we make a permanent fix? Because, like I said, I start with the end game in mind, right? And, and then that, and it just kept spinning over and over again. The only way that we can eradicate this behavior and eradicate this really travesty that happens in these underprivileged communities is by taking our profit first, right? Because Kiva, you're an entrepreneur, I'm an entrepreneur. We create jobs. We
That's right.
create we have a bigger impact than feeding our families. We create jobs in our communities, right? We help people beyond ourselves. There have been people that have joined my firm that, applied for Big Four and they were just as good, but for some reason they didn't connect with the interviewer. They were the wrong color, they didn't laugh at the jokes, but they didn't connect. And what happens is, as when we hire from our communities and we train them and we give them an experience that they would never get, we don't just pivot our own legacies, right? We pivot those in our community. And that is
Absolutely.
how you eradicate the ghettos of America by creating job equality and redistributing the wealth. And that's how you do that by minority businesses. We need you to take your profit first. We need you as a country to take your profit first.
Absolutely. I went to school in Baltimore City, and growing up in New Jersey, I grew up 2 miles from the beach. So Baltimore was a whole different world to me. And I'm just thinking about that. I remember volunteering with the Urban League, and at that time, a lot of the housing projects that were in Baltimore City, and that was always a thing. It was really talking about how to create that upward mobility, and how could that be done in a way that the wealth was redistributed, and therefore it does affect communities on a much grander scale. It's not just the wealth, it's the jobs, it's the little kids seeing the mother, the father, the aunt, the uncle, the cousin with the job and going to the job and like, I want to be like them when I grow up. So I want to have that kind of job or to do something similar. And it has such a ripple effect through our communities. And I greatly appreciate you sharing that, because that's what our, like, entrepreneurs, we are those job creating engines. It's not we think of all the larger corporations and the jobs, but we have that direct impact when it comes to hiring and who we hire and where that money can actually go and where to direct that. So I'm so yes and amen to all of that and to keep us moving forward by taking our profit first. Now, you mentioned your book. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, well, it's now on sale for pre-order, so you can go to Amazon.com and order Profit First for Minority Business Enterprises by Suzanne Mariga. The paper copies will be going on sale in the probably mid-April is when those will go on sale. So you can definitely get your copy, get it on pre-order. It already hit number one release today we announced it. So this is going to be a big deal. If you order the day it releases, you'll probably have to wait a week or so before it comes in. So definitely get your book copy right now for that. And we're going to go deep on it. We're going to cover some of the traditional profit first things that it covers with the cash management system, but we're actually going to go a lot deeper. We're going to talk about things like government contracting. There's
Mm,
how to successfully compete for government contracts. We're going to talk about things that people don't talk about, right? And what that I'm going to share some of my experience with how we got our government contracts in there too. We're also going to talk about building generational wealth through to tax strategies, right? I know Kiva, you and I talked a little bit before we started recording about just how your son had a Roth IRA, and
yes.
he's building wealth before he's even 18. You're already starting to transfer that wealth. We're going to talk about tax strategies such as that, and we're going to get into some even deeper tax strategies. We're going to talk about how does Warren Buffett pay less taxes than his secretary in terms of percentage, right?
Yes.
We're going to get deep into that. We're also going to talk about the big elephant in the room, right? And that is how to enter rooms where nobody looks like you. Because, as you grow in your success, right, eventually, in order to grow out of that circle, right, to grow and have a bigger impact, you're going to have to start to work with people that don't look like you, may not even want to work with you, right?
That's
And
right.
so, how do you navigate that circle? How do you build that network? How do you really become an influencer in your industry? And we're going to dive into that within the book also. So definitely check the book out. It's things that have never been talked about before.
Oh my gosh, that sounds exciting. So everyone make sure you should look that up on Amazon and I'll make sure to include a link down in below in the comments. All right. So how can our listeners connect with you?
The best way to get in touch with me is directly through our masterclass. We host a free masterclass. That's a 5-day masterclass where literally we're going to teach you the ins and outs of Profit First. And I think the next one that's scheduled is for the end of April. But you can find that class by going on to Facebook and searching Profit First Masterclass with Suzanne Mariga. Make sure it says with Suzanne Mariga. There's a few other non-legit ones out there, but make sure you go to Profit First with
Yes.
Suzanne Mariga to get to the author.
Awesome. Well, definitely. We'll have to include that link as well. That's amazing. Well, I want to just thank you so much, Suzanne, because this has been so enlightening. And I'm sure that our viewers are going to greatly appreciate this as we all seek to not only create generational wealth, but create generational shifts that really will have, as we talked about earlier, just a ripple effect. As two women, we just spoke the other day about equal women's pay day, and that doesn't actually come for us yet until August. And to really start to think about that. I've had that conversation with my daughter, like, and you have a daughter, we don't want that to be like August for them, where their pay is finally going to equal what someone else, a white man, made in the year prior. So, making sure that we do things now by taking our profit first, by setting our kids up in ways that they have access to that generational wealth, that we create the generational shifts that we want to see and actually make them happen in our own lifetimes and not saying someday or for some other person to bring that about. So, thank you again so much for sharing with us about Profit First and how to better manage our cash. And so, everyone else, I will include links in the bottom and the text comments below. And please make sure you check out upcoming Profit First for Minority Business Enterprises so that we can continue to create those shifts in our world that we want to see. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Kiva, for having me.
Thank you.